Hello and welcome back to another Legion Rogue video. In today's video, I'll be covering Subtlety Rogue openers, overviewing their talents, as well as providing a few new uses for Sprint thanks to an artifact trait. This first build here is what I've played the most on the beta. It's more of a bursty build, and I actually feel like it's weaker than the other build, which I'll show in a bit. You just take Master of Subtlety, Subterfuge, which also now increases the duration of Shadow Dance by 2 seconds. Deeper Stratagem gives you 6 combo points and allows your combo point finishers to consume 6, and they deal 10% more damage. It allows for greater burst. It's really nice. You could use Vigor as well, but so far I feel like Subtlety has enough burst or enough energy to do its opener to begin with, and you don't really run into energy problems when you use Deeper Stratagem anyway. Soothing Darkness is extremely broken for dueling. It's actually nerfed in Arena, but it's still really strong. It does see steep competition with Elusiveness though, because Spammable Feint, 30% less damage, you can't go wrong. It's actually really strong. If you have a healer behind you, you probably want to use Feint. The following row, Prey on the Weak is one of the most popular options, but I actually think that Strike from the Shadows is better, especially if you're playing the other build, which I'll show in a bit, which is like focused on longer shadow dances and whatnot. Premeditation in the following rows, I really think it's the only option. Enveloping Shadows could be interesting to try out, but for the most part, Premeditation is going to pull ahead in burst scenarios, which is what Subtlety's always been about. And then in the final row, it's a big playstyle changer. You got Master of Shadows, which you immediately gain 30 energy when you enter Stealth or activate Shadow Dance. Mark for Death, same old Mark for Death, 5 combo points, 1 minute cooldown, resets if they die. And then Death from Above, it's kind of different now. It costs 25 energy instead of 50 energy. And I believe they've actually nerfed it though, so in PvP it only does a 25% increase on damage. Correct me if I'm wrong. Death from Above actually works really well with the passive we have, Relentless Strikes. Your finishing moves have a 20% chance per combo point to generate 40 energy. We previously had this as sub, but it was only 25 energy. So when we spent 50 and we got 25 back, it wasn't that big of a deal. But now that it costs 25 and we get 40 back, it actually matters quite a bit. And we also have a new passive too that's worth mentioning here. Your finishing moves reduce the remaining cooldown on Shadow Dance by 3 seconds per combo point. And with Deeper Stratagem and the 6 points, that really starts to add up. Can like just one Death from Above 6 point like removes 18 seconds. It's pretty crazy. If I'm playing the burst build, these are likely the talents that I would go with. Gladiator's Medallion, Sparring. Unless I'm against a caster, I may swap that out for Reinforced Armor. Cut to the Chase is probably the best option almost all the time. Silhouette is actually an interesting talent. Shadow Step's cooldown is reduced by 50% when cast on a friendly target. I mean, that's a pretty low cooldown defensive ability to get to a pillar or whatever, as long as your teammates have good positioning. Shadow's Caress, while in stealth, the cooldown recovery of all your abilities is increased by 30%. I feel like that's really strong. Honor Among Thieves is pretty good too. It can proc from yourself as well. And Smoke Bomb definitely still has its place. It's a very strong ability, but it's hard to say if I'll take it that much. I don't know. And then in the following row, I take Cold Blood because it is definitely the best damage increase out of all of them. Dagger in the Dark is kind of inconsistent, and it actually tells people that you're around them even if you're in stealth, like because it puts a debuff on them. Veil of Midnight could have its uses in dueling, but for the most part you're probably going to want Cold Blood for its damage. And then the staple of these honor talents when you're playing the burst build is Thief's Bargain. Your damage while stealth is increased by an additional 20%, and the cooldown of your Vanish spell is reduced by 90 seconds. Maximum health is reduced by 25%. So I mean, we get a big damage increase, but we become more squishy, which doesn't necessarily synergize well with previous talents like our Soothing Darkness, but it mixes such a glass cannon that it's worth having. Alright, for this opener, we're going to start in stealth with Symbols of Death into Cold Blood, and then we're going to open with Cheap Shot into Gormod's Bite, which gives us 6 combo points. Then we'll use Nightblade into a Shadow Dance Cheap Shot into a Shadow Strike, and then follow it up with a Death from Above. For the most part, this is going to be your standard opener if you're running Death from Above. The pros of this opener is that it doesn't require many cooldowns, and that's definitely an advantage it has over the other specs. Here's a situation where I use the same opener, but this time I'm going to also incorporate Shadow Blades. This rogue's trinket is down, and he is Orc too, so you'll see there's a small gap in between stuns, but for the most part it goes pretty smooth. We're able to turn around the duel and finish him off. So I actually start this off with Vanish. I already have Symbols of Death and Cold Blood previously applied, and I go into a cheap shot, and I pop Shadow Blades right away, Gormaw's Bite, 6 combo points, into Nightblade, into a Shadow Dance, cheap shot, into a Shadow Strike, into a DFA, which does humongous damage. It crits him for like 466k, and he goes down. I have one more opener for this build, and it's going to incorporate the artifact trait Finality. When, after using Nightblade or Eviscerate, your next use of that finishing move is empowered. The effectiveness of Finality is actually reduced in PvP, but still we're going to use this Eviscerate in place of a Nightblade to set up an even bigger Death from Above. I believe the overall damage increase from Finality still ends up being about 15% for a 5-point Eviscerate. And so we're going to use Symbols of Death, then we're going to apply Cold Blood, and then open with Cheap Shot, Shadow Blades, into Gormaw's Bite, into an Eviscerate, into a Shadow Dance Cheap Shot, Shadow Strike, and finish off with a Death from Above. Overall, I wouldn't recommend using this opener on a warrior. It's better for things that are squishy, such as rogues, as you'd prefer using Nightblade against a warrior since it does shadow damage and hits through armor. Alright, I'd just like to go over this long Shadow Dance build before I move on to the sprint tips. Basically, you just take Master of Subtlety, Subterfuge for the increased Shadow Dance duration, Deeper Stratagem. The 6-point combo points is really nice. It allows you to have a stronger Nightblade, and that's more sustained damage. Soothing Darkness is really strong with this spec because you have Shadow Dance up a large amount of time. And Strike from the Shadows, since we get so many Shadow Strikes, it gives us that nice consistent slow that Sub really doesn't have. Nightblade is okay, but when you're constantly warping to people with Shadow Strike, you can't consistently get that slow on them instantly, and people will often get away from you. And then Premeditation, so our Shadow Strike is giving 2 combo points instead of 1. And then Master of Shadows, so every time we dance we get more energy. It's really nice. You don't have to play Master of Shadows, you could also play Death from Above, and then all of the previous openers would still be relevant. But overall, I think Master of Shadows is the better choice. And then in Honor Talents, instead of taking Thief's Bargain, we take Phantom Assassin, which increases our Shadow Dance duration by another 3 seconds, and you automatically gain your Symbols of Death whenever you stealth. So you can pretty much almost forget about that ability. You rarely ever have to apply it when you have this build. Okay, so a quick example of an opener with this build would be you stealth, it uses Symbols of Death, we use Cold Blood, then we proceed to open with Cheap Shot, into a Gormaw's Bite, pop Shadow Blades, use Nightblade, Shadow Dance, which refreshes our energy thanks to that talent, into a Cheap Shot, which, since we have Shadow Blades up, gives us 5 combo points, Eviscerate, Cheap Shot, Shadow Strike, Eviscerate. And that second Eviscerate gets a nice power boost from Finality, and it's not the strongest opener, like the other openers probably would have killed this rogue, but it was still pretty good. And in turn, we gained a lot of sustained damage and a lot of control in the long run, which is a lot better for an arena game. Okay, so for the last thing I want to cover in this video is our Fangs of the Devourer have a artifact trait called Flickering Shadows, and what that does is after we activate Sprint and then take no damage or deal no damage for 3 seconds, it'll activate Vanish without triggering its cooldown, which allows us to do some really cool stuff. I don't know if it's all intended, and some of it might even get nerfed, but for now, here's some examples of some things we can do with it. Okay, so for this clip, basically I'm going to cap the flag and you're going to see me vanish after a couple seconds. I'm going to pop Sprint and I'm going to try and wait as long as I can. I actually mistimed this a little bit and you could definitely do it even better than this, but you want to try and wait 2.5 seconds and then start capping the flag, and then you'll instantly vanish as soon as you start capping. And at least in random battlegrounds, if people aren't paying attention, you're going to get flags for free. It's kind of funny. The next use is a little bit more practical and can be used while dueling casters, or sometimes in arena, I guess. You're going to see me get nuked by this Fire Mage, and then I cloak, pop Sprint, and start bandaging, and then halfway through my Cloak of Shadows, 3 seconds into that sprint, I'm going to vanish and I'll still be bandaging. And then we're good to go for an opener, and we're back at full health. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I know this video was somewhat brief at times, but I still hope you're able to take something away from it. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more, as I have more Legion content on the way. I'm looking to do some Outlaw clips, as well as some more specific things after that. But anyway, stay tuned, and I hope you have a good day.